Hello and welcome back to another day in the arena. It's me, it's CGB, and today in the arena we're checking out War of the Spark updates and upgrades to Gruul Midrange. This list was played by True Dawn in the Fandom Legends tournament yesterday and took second place. True Dawn's been posting screenshots on Twitter of his climb up the mythic ranks and the lists he uses, and he's put some work in with this Gruul Midrange list, so we're going to borrow from him. He's a good follow on Twitch and Twitter, so you should check out True Dawn FM. And this is a heck of a list with some brand new cards. The main thing that Gruul Midrange got from War of the Spark was the Planeswalker package. These are all fresh Planeswalkers in the deck. Domri, Anarch of Bolas, Chandra, Fire Artisan, Sarkhan, the Masterless, and even out of the sideboard, Tybalt, Rakish Instigator. So many Planeswalkers coming into the deck that it gives the deck a lot more resilience against control, card advantage engines later in the game, and the ability to play less narrow cards such as Lava Coil in the main deck. Instead, we can run burn decks, and if we need to kill a larger creature, we can fight it with Domri, the Anarch of Bolas. Also added to the deck is Paradise Druid, a card that lets us cast our Planeswalkers earlier than expected, which is also very sweet. While weak to specifically Goblin Chain Whirler, Paradise Druid's hexproof does mean you usually get a mana out of it, which can make Rekindling Phoenix and Chandra Fire Artisan come down early, which is pretty awesome. The sideboard still includes a lot of the hits from the last format with Direfleet Daredevil against control-type decks, as well as being useful against all kinds of other decks where you need to lower your curve. Even against white, I often want to bring in Daredevil, as a 2/1 first striker can hold off most of their creatures. Then we have Lava Coil, of course, anywhere where you want to kill creatures of this size and sorcery speed doesn't hurt you. Cinder Vines is for the Nexus decks, and Vivian Reed is another powerful Planeswalker to take on large flyers like Drakes and Lyra Dawnbringer. The deck is consistent, powerful, and effective. The more early Llanowar elves you have, the harder it is to beat. I'm excited to try it out, so let's go play some best of 3 ranked games. It's game 1, we're on the draw, and we're looking at a hand that has a turn 2 Paradise Druid and potentially a turn 3 Chandra or Gruul Spellbreaker. If we draw a Forest, it's even better than that. So this is a keep. Too bad, so sad. We'll show just the mountain for now and let the opponent think mono red thoughts. And it looks like our opponent is on some kind of Bant deck. Here's Bond of Flourishing, search for a permanent, gain 3 life, and it's an Overgrown Tomb. That's black, green, white, and blue. Perhaps a Superfriends Planeswalker style deck. Let's go for the Paradise Druid with its hexproof ability. We'll make sure that we probably get to resolve a Planeswalker next turn. And here is the Overgrown Tomb, and there is Teferi, the Time Raveler.
I can no longer stand by and watch. Don't worry, I got this.
So we can kill the Teferi right here, right now with Gruul Spellbreaker and Paradise Druid and give the opponent 0 value, as well as have a great board presence. Or we could play the Chandra and start plussing it. I actually believe in my heart that the Gruul Spellbreaker Paradise Druid line, creating a better battlefield, is the better move. Our opponent probably has some amount of sweepers in their deck, but Planeswalkers are a good follow-up to sweepers. So let's slam this, give it haste, and bring the pain to this Teferi before it gets any value from our opponent besides the life gain of this particular turn. Plus, we're better set up to attack future Planeswalkers. I have to believe my opponent is on a Planeswalker heavy deck. They're running 4 colors, and their only 2 plays so far are Bond of Flourishing and a Teferi Time Raveler. Superfriends lists of this and that have continued to show up here and there. Makes sense when you play an all Planeswalker type of set that some people would go with that. Okay. We drew a Sarkhan the Masterless. We also have a Chandra Fire Artisan and a Domri Anarch of Bolas. This is a very interesting turn. On one hand, I really want to get Chandra going. On the other hand, I really want to get the Masterless and make a dragon, as having that battlefield presence against Planeswalkers is so powerful. So I'm rolling with Sarkhan the Masterless.
No sword can pierce my skin. Magnificent!
Next turn, Sarkhan can plus to turn into a dragon himself and attack down a Planeswalker if necessary. Or, if the opponent deals with Sarkhan, we have a leftover 4/4 dragon to attack a Planeswalker. And the opponent's passing the turn, implying perhaps a Settle the Wreckage or some other effect to target the Sarkhan. So how do we want to do this? I think I like playing a card pre-combat to sort of bait out whether or not the opponent has a counter, a Settle the Wreckage, or Vraska's Contempt. And the kind of card that I think the opponent would counter would be Chandra, but I don't want it countered very badly. What if I play a Domri? What if I play a Rekindling Phoenix? If the opponent is running sweepers, which go very well with Planeswalkers, I feel like Rekindling Phoenix is the best play to make, as a sweeper will leave the Rekindling Phoenix on the board. The opponent lets this resolve. I don't believe here that I want to attack with Sarkhan. Running Sarkhan into a Settle the Wreckage or something of that nature is pretty bad, and if the opponent has a Vraska's Contempt, I think they want to use it on the Sarkhan, not the dragon. So I may as well send in the dragon. I'll also send in the Paradise Druid. If this is a Settle the Wreckage, I'll give up the Paradise Druid for the land. But I think what we're going to see here is a Vraska's Contempt on Sarkhan the Masterless. The opponent chooses Assassin's Trophy on the dragon. That's not too bad. Let's go get a green mana so we can play a Llanowar Elf if we wish. 2 damage in. We'll plus the Sarkhan.
I summon you.
And we'll cast the Llanowar Elf. So we certainly could have played that more aggressive. It's pretty interesting that our opponent chose to Assassin's Trophy the dragon. And here comes Teferi. Let's see what the hero wants to do.
For my excellent timing.
A minus here could put Sarkhan back. It could also hit the Phoenix. And Phoenix is the choice. So we know Rekindling Phoenix will be on top of our deck. That makes it really tempting to play Chandra so that we can get Rekindling Phoenix next turn. We can also play Chandra and Domri, which is pretty crazy. The downside of that is if the opponent has some way to like destroy all of our Planeswalkers or a weird spell like Single Combat. But I don't think I'm playing around that here today. I think now is the time to get really aggressive.
Oh, I'm sorry. Were you doing something?
We'll play the Chandra.
It's my turn. Let's light it up.
A Lightning Strike, which we can cast, or we can attack for 5. Attacking is probably much, much better, of course. I'm very curious to see if the opponent has some method to blow me out for these lines. The Llanowar Elf can take down Teferi while dealing 8 freaking damage to the opponent. Let's get him.
That will go according to plan.
Let's see if the... Okay, what have you got? Shockland. Ugin. Ugin versus the world.
You could learn in 1,000 lifetimes.
Ugin has to minus to deal with the Sarkhan.
Only you past is unwritten.
Ugin minus destroy target colored permanent, but here we have the Lightning Strike, so we can finish off the opponent this way. And we don't want to show them any more of our deck, so we won't. As we prepare for game 2. All these Planeswalkers. I think that makes Direfleet Daredevil pretty weak, Lava Coil pretty bad, Vivian pretty awkward, and Cindervines, which looks nice, probably isn't that nice. Our opponent did show us an Ixalan's Binding, which is very interesting. And perhaps the best thing I have to do against these Planeswalkers is grind. So being on the draw, the games might take longer. Vivian Reed going against Ixalan's Binding seems okay, but Cindervines I think is too slow, and will sit on the battlefield doing not enough. How about Tybalt? It does seem like a deck like this would play some way to gain life, and I think now that we've added those, we can cut Shock from the deck, as I don't think it will have many targets, whereas Lightning Strike may still be necessary to get the face damage in that we need to win the game. As usual, I try to take the full time and at least consider what I'm missing. What will our opponent sideboard? I'm playing against a 4-color brew built around Planeswalkers, so it's really hard to imagine what's going to come in. Oath of Kaya seems to make a lot of sense, but I don't really... like, these aren't good ways to fight that. Tybalt's an okay way to fight it. The rest of the deck, I think we've just got to roll with it and try to be as aggressive as we were in Game 1, where we had a very decent hand. Pretty rough. Like the last game, we want to prioritize battlefield presence. But I do think I keep this, hope to get there on the red mana, as we have, I guess, a double Guardian is sort of a mulligan already if the opponent has an easy removal. This is not the most assertive hand. Is it a keep? It's really close. But the more I think about it, being on the draw with needing an assertive battlefield presence and the chance that I hit a Llanowar Elf style hand with better mana, I think I mulligan. Hello. Hello, hello. That's kind of rough, but it does allow for turn 2 Elf Guardian, turn 3 Pump Guardian, play another Guardian. So, yeah, I think we'll keep that land. It's unlikely that we'll be in a world where another land is a bad thing right now. I also don't like the early Tibalt. I think we do want to focus on getting a board presence as quickly as possible. Our opponent sideboarded into an Explorer package, or they had that in the deck and it didn't show up Game 1. I'm very interested in what the heck this means. I'm not going to play Tibalt yet, though. I still want to prioritize a battlefield presence with the Wild Growth Walker. I'm sorry, the Growth Chamber Guardian, and make my opponent answer it quickly. If they have the answer, that's very bad for us. We're going to have to draw some good threats, and they keep touching it, which makes me think they plan to kill it. If this does die, we're in a lot of trouble because our plan is basically on the battlefield. We'll have to draw some of our card advantage effects. Interesting. The opponent with no plays, implying that they can kill the Growth Chamber Guardian but want to eat my turn by making me react by using it. But we almost have enough mana to use it twice. So I think the right play is to attack with the Guardian and not use it, whatever the opponent does. If they block, they definitely have something. And yeah, they have something. So they're trying to entrap me, but I don't have to take the bait. And I don't have to let my 3 mana down. So we can play this tapped. And now, if the opponent targets our Growth Chamber Guardian with something, we will use it to pump. And if they don't, we'll have double pump available next turn, so we can pump in response to a removal spell. Ixalan's Binding. That is a terrible one for the Growth Chamber Guardian. And you have to wonder if I got outplayed on this one and overthought it. But there's still a lot of ways that this could go well. We can't cast this Growth Chamber Guardian anymore. But we can still draw a way to blow up the Ixalan's Binding. We have 2 Vivian Reeds, and we have 2 Thrashing Brontodons. And that's too much land. I am not enjoying this right now.
You should be flattered. Oh, they're so cute.
Let's make some Devils and at least keep our opponent from gaining life with that Wild Growth Walker. We still haven't seen any Explore creatures, though, which is unusual.
Any lunar anomalies you have experienced?
Lunar anomalies, huh?
Let me aid your research.
What's the quest? Jadelight Ranger and Milfour. Love it. So this does have some text. Spells and abilities your opponent's control can't cause you to discard cards or sacrifice permanents. I don't think that will apply very much. -3 is return a card from your graveyard to your hand. +1 is choose a non-land and reveal until you hit it. All right. Good news is we've got Tibalt here, and now we have Sarkhan. Sarkhan can plus, so Tibalt can attack Tamiyo down immediately. The card that Tamiyo might wish to get back is a Finality, which can sweep most of our good effects away. So we want to avoid that. Therefore, I like playing the Sarkhan I like to plus the Sarkhan and immediately turn Tibalt into a 4/4 dragon. And I'm going to send Tibalt after the Tamiyo. Now, I could make sure it dies by throwing away an elf and a devil, and then make another devil to block the Wildgrowth Walker. I think that's pretty good, considering we don't need the mana. The sad part is if something kills is that the Wildgrowth Walker can attack down the Tibalt if the devil gets removed. And I don't like that at all. I guess the opponent hitting a Jade Light Ranger isn't that bad of a thing, so I don't think I want to give these up. I think I'd rather defend my Sarkhan and my Tibalt.
I guess you do not want to talk.
All right, let's make another one.
I adore an audience.
Another cute little devil. And see how the opponent deals with Sarkhan the Masterless. They are in love with Ixalan's Binding. We've seen it both games, or they just drew it, but it seems like it's a 3 or 4 of if they're seeing it as often as they are.
I think you will find my notes helpful.
What does Tamiyo search for? Is it Jade Light Ranger again? Do they pivot and name something like Ixalan's Binding? A dedicated Tamiyo deck is rewarded by a lot of 4-ofs in the deck. It's Jade Light Ranger, but remember, while the Wildgrowth Walker might grow, the opponent won't gain life. Not as long as Tibalt lives. So, opponent tanking on this one. On to Flourishing. Trying to hit a land, perhaps? And hitting one. But no life gain because of Tibalt. Does the opponent wish to shock and gain even more no life by playing Jade Light Ranger? Do you think they missed the Tibalt interaction with the life gain? I wonder. Second Wildgrowth Walker. Oh no. So those can be very large, which means we want to end the game in the air, nice and quick. So plus, until end of turn, each Planeswalker becomes a 4/4 dragon. We could go for a 2-turn clock, attacking with Tibalt and Sarkhan. The opponent would have to remove the Tibalt and gain life from Jade Light Ranger next turn. Tamiyo can -3 to hit what? Find Finality? That doesn't do anything right here. Teferi, Hero of Dominaria, that could, for 5 mana, come down and bin Tibalt. But then we would still have Sarkhan. And the opponent would be at 8. Not to mention a Devil could take out a Teferi on 1 loyalty. I think I like this a lot.
They are coming.
How about if we also attacked with 1 Devil? Here's an idea. So if we don't want Tamiyo to minus, we can attack 2 to face and throw 1 Devil at the Tamiyo. When the opponent blocks the Devil with one of the Wildgrowth Walkers, we can do the 1 point of damage when it dies to the Tamiyo, so that Tamiyo cannot get back the Teferi or anything else out of the graveyard that the opponent might be able to take advantage of. The opponent will get another dig with Tamiyo, but I think I can accept that.
You're making it difficult to work.
Alright, we've got a close one. Can the opponent answer the board? They have to remove the Tibalt and gain life, or they have to just remove either Planeswalker to buy another turn. If the Sarkhan and the Tibalt go unchecked and the opponent's life total stays at 8, we can attack for lethal in the air. Tamiyo is a dig. The opponent will have to name the card. They could name Assassin's Trophy or Ixalan's Binding. They have an Assassin's Trophy. Very unfortunate. Another Sarkhan on top would have not quite been what I was looking for. And now the opponent with Jade Light Ranger. Hitting 2 land. And here come triggers. So now what's the play?
I know I noted this somewhere.
The name is Merfolk Branchwalker, and it's a big whiff. And this time our opponent hit a Jade Light Ranger. So here come the walkers.
Listen to them roar.
I feel like I should block one of them so I can still make a dragon next turn, and that I can use the 1 damage to remove the Jade Light Ranger if I wish. Then I could attack with one of the Llanowar elves to check the Tamiyo, and leave the other to block one of the Wild Growth Walkers with a 4/4 to block the other. So I like this. We do need a good draw.
A challenge.
We want to make sure that Tamiyo can't minus to get back a Jade Light Ranger. That would be pretty tragic. That's a good draw. That is a very good draw. So let's make a 4/4 dragon.
Come to me.
Let's play Domri. Domri gives all of our creatures that bonus. So Domri can minus to make target creature you control fight a creature you don't control. So this dragon is going to fight this Wild Growth Walker and kill it.
That's the sound of a stampede coming straight at ya.
So I still want... I think I like just tagging down the Tamiyo and holding back a dragon. The opponent has already shown that they can set up situations to kill one creature, and they have a lot of interesting cards. I could kill the Tamiyo, but then if my dragon dies, I lose one of my planeswalkers, which are really propping me up in the game. So I like making the opponent name the card, because as long as they're self-milling themselves naming cards, it's not going that well. I also don't think I have a use for this extra land, not really right now, so I'm going to hold it. It's all about having our planeswalkers alive, I think. If they're alive, we have a battlefield presence to fight off our opponent. And if Tamiyo can minus and get access to this whole graveyard, that's a big negative, so I need to keep fighting that off as well. And in the meantime, I have to continue to find ways to keep my opponent from killing me with giant Wild Growth Walkers. It's too bad we had to lose Tybalt. He was doing so good. If this binding gets blown up, we'll be in great shape, though. Opponent on a tough turn, what will they do? Magic can be a complicated game, my friends. I think one big step is, can they remove the dragon? The dragon is a pretty big boss right now in the field, and can swoop over and kill Tamiyo next turn, and if they remove the dragon, they still have to deal with Sarkhan. Can the opponent hit with Tamiyo? It's been a tough game for them so far to do that. Merfolk Branchwalker, 0 for 4. Unbelievable. It must be a 4 of in the deck, and the opponent just can't hit. Duress is there. Blue mana created. What are we doing with it? By the way, so white appears to be for Ixalan's Binding and Teferi so far. Interesting splash. You feel like there must be something better. And there's a Nissa.
Together, we will prevail.
Holy crap. I wonder if our opponent is going to remember the text on Sarkhan that says that when a creature attacks, if you control it, every dragon you control deals a damage to that creature. And it looks like they do remember. So we drew a Domri. So for sure I'm going to plus the Sarkhan and attack with these, and this one has the lower power and toughness, but this one would have Summoning Sickness, so we want to play this one after combat and use the fight mechanic. The opponent might take 15 damage here. That's a lot of damage. And then once again, they would have to gain life next turn, but the opponent's proven that they can fight their way out of that. So here, based on their plays last turn, I just don't believe that their hand is all that great right now. So I want the opponent to kill the Domri more than the other two. And if they go after Tamiyo, maybe the opponent would kill the Domri? No. I think the opponent would kill the Domri in this scenario, because I don't think my opponent wants to protect Tamiyo very much. Alright, get him. Alright, no kind of nonsense seal away, nothing like that. So now we play other Domri. Keep this one. We minus for the fight mechanic. This is the creature that's going to fight. This is what they're going to fight.
Ravnica deserves its demise.
And we'll pass it on over. Feeling ahead. The opponent's hand strikes me as a lot of Planeswalkers that they don't like playing into a bunch of flying monsters. And let's hope that's the case. Careful taps. These always raise the suspense in a game, if you ask me, at this stage. Like, early in a game, it's annoying. Late in a game, I feel like it really raises the stakes, and its finality. Alright, that lets the Temple Garden kill Domri. But, no dragon! Ugh, that ability almost got me excited, then I remembered no dragon. And our opponent finally found their Merfolk Branchwalker with a Teferi on top, and we draw a land. How uninspiring.
To the skies.
So, all that Sarkin can do is get in there and say go. And for the length of the video, normally I would play this out to get more information, but for the sake of the length of the video, I'm going to forfeit this game and move on to the next one, as I don't have any strong draw steps that can really pull me back into it. Alright, now that I've seen some Wildgrowth Walker Jadelight Ranger shenanigans, as well as some fine finalities, perhaps there is a case for Direfleet Daredevil, and perhaps there's also some cases for Lava Coils, as Wildgrowth Walker is a real train wreck. Against Finality, Paradise Druid isn't as good, but we're on the play, so it feels like it could be better. Thrashing Brontodon is good against Ixalan's Binding, but that's all, and I think I'd prefer Vivian Reed in the spot, as it's good against Finality and other sweepers. What else? We really need to draw Rekindling Phoenix. In that game, Rekindling Phoenix could have made a big difference. Whether or not to run a Growth Chamber Guardian against Ixalan's Binding is interesting, so I'm going to trim one of those. It was a pretty big negative to get it nailed last time. I also think 3 Direfleet Daredevils is right, as I don't think 4 is quite there. Our opponent didn't run that many spells, but they have just enough that I think we can take advantage. There's also a pretty low curve, pretty aggressive, so we should be able to come out swinging here in Game 3. Oh man. Well, we have the Llanowar Elf and no red source. I think it's a mulligan. No, not like this. I'm going to keep and try to scry for a green. This could be a very anticlimactic end to a very good match. This is one of the dangers, though, of doing best of 3 videos. It's very hard to line up a good match that plays all the way through without something coming down to a train wreck of Mana Screw. And it looks like that's what we've got here now. The feels bads at the end are often the hardest part of making best of 3 content for YouTube. Jadelight Ranger on time this time. We'll give it one more draw step. I don't think that there's any coming back if we miss this one. So, good game, opponent, good match. But Game 3, you just can't fix that, and it's so frustrating when I'm recording and I'm having such a great match that I can't have a good Game 3. Alright, the opening hand is very keepable. We're on the draw. It's going to be rough, so it's a bit slow for my taste, but it can cast just about everything we might want to cast, which is important. It's also, I mean, I wouldn't say Thought Erasure proof, but it's not horrible against a Thought Erasure. It's not absolutely dead in the water like a 4 land, 2 ramp spell, 1 good spell hand is. Green, white, interesting. So let's go with the Paradise Druid. I like the ramp creatures here, especially the hexproof. The opponent can't disrupt it next turn with, say, a Teferi, Time Raveler. And here's a Jade Light Ranger from the opponent. Hydroid Krasis. So, Bant Midrange, are you ready for a war? I'm expecting quite the slugfest. We could play the Chandra, but the opponent can attack it down very quickly. So I think better here is just more ramp creatures like Domri, the Anarchabolus. Plus for a green. And cast a Paradise Druid, I think. We could play a Growth Chamber Guardian, but I would never want to block with it. And against a Jade Light Ranger that can crash in to kill our Domri, that's a bad idea. But this way I have a hexproof blocker who can trade with the Jade Light Ranger if the opponent chooses to attack. If the opponent has exactly Deputy of Detention, it's a bit of a tragedy, to be honest, as it can take out both Paradise Druids. Okay, it's a Teferi. That's much better.
Thank me later.
I was sweating for a moment. Alright. So I think this is an easy block. If Teferi Minus is here to take out the Paradise Druid, we can have Gruul Spellbreaker kill Teferi. We could also have Growth Chamber Guardian come down and pump using the mana from Domri.
That's more like it.
A little bit of tempo is nice for our opponent and all. But now we have options, and I think I really like Spellbreaker and Druid coming back. So plus for mana, make it red. Play this with haste. And we'll deploy this again as well. And slam down the Rattler.
We will meet again.
It's not like we necessarily had to get rid of Teferi right then, but it is pretty much an open thing to go for. Let's take it. Prison Realm will take out the Spellbreaker and let the opponent scry a card, which they go to the bottom. They haven't hit their land drop for the turn though. So this is a mana, as there's nothing to fight. So do we want Growth Chamber Guardians building our board, or do we want Chandra getting us extra cards? It feels like Chandra would be pretty solid right here. The opponent just played a Prison Realm. They could have another one, which would be frustrating. Or we could just get really assertive with the Guardians. I'm actually feeling the Guardians here. So let's go with that. They're a lot of power and toughness, and let's go ahead and grow them now before the opponent gets to untap and somehow interact. We'll play this land. We could play another Guardian, but I like attacking for 3 now. That way, if the opponent somehow sweeps the board with something like a Time Wipe, we might be able to hold a Growth Chamber Guardian as a backup. Now, I know there are a few mana off of that plan, but I don't think it makes it a bad plan.
I've got time.
Guardian to the hand, okay. The party continues. The opponent is staying mana screwed. Well, I know that life, and I'm sorry. Sorry, not sorry?
We won't answer other kids.
Let's relaunch. Let's repump. I think now at this point, I will just deploy more creatures to the field. Deputy of Detention would be nasty, but we could Lightning Strike it. And at this point, the Teferi isn't going to do anything for a turn or two. A Tamiyo and a Paradise Druid, huh. And then the opponent scoops out of pure anger that they couldn't draw land number 4. All right, how do we sideboard for this matchup? Daredevil doesn't make a lot of sense to me yet. The Explorer cards probably mean that we're going to be against some level of life gain, which can make Tibalt pretty good. Lava Coil also is good against a number of creatures from the deck. Possibly better than Shock, which, on the draw though, Shock is good against Llanowar Elves and Incubation Druid if the opponent's on that plan. Vivian Reed is good for the grindy matchups. Can blow up a card like a Prison Realm. But what's bad? Thrashing Brontodon's a little bit slow, doesn't line up well against Jade Light Ranger. It's good against Prison Realm specifically, but I'd prefer Vivian Reed. And being on the draw, this game is likely to go a bit longer. The Lightning Strikes might be able to get cut. The opponent showed some Planeswalkers, but Lightning Strike going after them isn't the greatest, and I'm sure that they'll have a battlefield presence for Lava Coil to hit, and I want to keep Shock on the draw in case my opponent has Elves. So I think this is the configuration we're looking for. Well, Elf into Spellbreaker. Too much land, but I still think it's a keep on the draw. We can rip some good cards like, I don't know, Rekindling Phoenix. And then we have a really sick curve that the opponent will be hard-pressed to deal with because Bant just doesn't have that in their range to kill those turn 2 super threats. Here's a Gruul Spellbreaker. Let's do haste and get our damage right away. If the opponent gets to adapt the Incubation Druid to 5 toughness, it can block the Spellbreaker, whether it's a 4/4 or a 3/3. And here's a baby Crassus. 1 life, 1 card, 2/2. Let's show the opponent our spell-breaking ability. And let's make them have a good answer to Rekindling Phoenix. It's a solid draw. It has the opponent under pressure, but the fact that it was on the draw means that we're in a tougher spot than we would be otherwise. And the opponent should have exile effects running white. Like Bant really relies on cards like Prison Realm, Ixalan's Binding, Deputy of Detention. And Teferi bouncing the Rekindling Phoenix isn't bad either. But what does the opponent actually have? That's the real question. We know what can be in their deck. What's in their hand? Deputy of Detention is here. And that's a good one at this stage. We need a way to remove it. We don't draw one. We do draw another Spellbreaker, which against a second Deputy would be absolutely traumatizing. We also have a Growth Chamber Guardian that we can adapt. But let's go like this. Give it haste. I think we have to really try to push through quickly. There's some blocks. Chumping away just to save, just to basically gain 2 life with the Crassus. So big turn. What can the opponent do to stabilize? A 4/4 Crassus would be a big problem. The opponent would go up to 11. Our counter attack would only realistically be for 7, but no, it's Time Wipe. And that is a card. We get back the Rekindling Phoenix, but the Deputy of Detention can take it next turn, and what a draw. That is a huge draw. The problem with it, well, the Deputy of Detention can take out the dragon we make, but then the Sarkhan itself can fly over and everything else is intact. So we're going to make another big flyer and hope it gets there. Make the opponent answer all the threats. We basically have 3 threats with 4 power and flying. Our opponent has 5 life. Of course it's 5 life. A Time Wipe and they still die. They don't have a second white source for perhaps another Deputy of Detention.
I know my responsibility.
So it's Teferi Time Raveler, getting rid of the dragon, drawing a card, the opponent hoping to hit an untapped pain-free white source, I think, to play the Deputy. Can they do it? Can they get there? They take pain. Oh, that's not going to be good enough then. And here's the Deputy taking out the Phoenix, and the opponent's hoping that the Sarkhan, that I won't read the ability, that I'll miss the line. So let's show them we know how the cards work.
I will call the dragon.
Hiya! Killer Sarkhan to the dome. And that'll do it. Smashing Bant with much power in the air. I hope that you enjoyed this video showing the additions and updates and upgrades to Gruul Midrange with War of the Spark. I really like the Planeswalker package. It feels like a much stronger, more resilient deck to me. And if you are out there playing it on ladder and having success, please post a build and some thoughts you may have or sideboarding options that you like in the comments. Also, let me know how are the videos going? Do you like the upgrades and updates section? I know that many of you like Jank Tank and New Brews, but many of you also frequently ask me what I'm doing with Azorius Control or Gruul Midrange or Dimir or whatever deck. Insert deck here. They often want updates with the new cards, so I'm trying to space that out and provide all the different looks at the format, from new decks to janky combos to upgrades to existing decks. So thank you for watching this video, and as always, I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.